And good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Marianne, morning, Justin. And welcome. I just want to say before we dive into this, really appreciate everyone liking, subscribing. We get some really good feedback from people watching these videos, and I hope that they continue being useful for everyone as we kind of keep producing them. So please take a look if you have a chance. We have a big catalog of live streams out there that we put together, just have a variety of topics. You'll learn a lot about just what we do and this may improve your business and IT in general. So today's actually a pretty interesting topic. It's one that seems on the surface to be like a pretty innocent, innocuous thing, but it's really pretty dangerous. It's called shadow IT. It sounds dangerous when you say it that way, but because before we get into shadow IT, I just want to say, Marianne, thank you. She's Valiant's training manager, and Justin, our CIO, and we're here to kind of go over this shadow IT thing. So, shadow IT is one of those things that we can get into what it is, but when you start applying some security best practices and security concepts, especially around the idea of the security triad, we're going to talk about that, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's about how IT works best to keep all the data in a way that is useful and safe, that sort of thing. And we're going to talk more about that. But so the shadow IT defeats every leg of the triad, right? It does all sorts of bad things because what it does is it defeats the controls that allow businesses to have visibility into data and protecting their staff, protecting their business. And but we're going to go deeper into that triad next. Actually, tomorrow we have a great webinar, much more in depth, more of a very part of our educational series around security best practices. We'll talk about the triad and how it applies to businesses and kind of break it down in a way that is really accessible. But sometimes that you see those words there and it looks all fancy. And reality is it really applies to every business, big or small. So that being said, Marianne, what's shadow IT?
Yeah, so I mean, very basic. Shadow IT is any sort of service or software that the users at your business are using that are not sanctioned by the company. So if they're going out on their own and using a certain software that they just downloaded on their own, or a service online that they're using that's not really part of your core technology, that's shadow IT. So it's basically, it's stuff that's undocumented. It's things that you can't manage, and that opens up a whole can of worms about being able to control your data, being able to make sure that there's you don't have security risks on that stuff. It's a lot, and it can be a big wide range, but yeah, it's basically just you don't know what's being used, or you aren't in control, and things can go awry.
Right. I mean, Justin, what is good? I mean, like, why do people have shadow IT? What purpose does it? Why does it happen?
Really, anytime shadow IT crops up, you can see it as a failure of the existing IT policy and IT tools to meet the needs of the business. So the most common one that I see all the time is, oh yeah, we just signed up for a free Dropbox account so that we can share files. It's like, okay, so that means that the business IT, the services that are being provided to that person, is either there isn't an option for them, or they don't know how to use the tool that's there, or the tool that's there is too complicated or too cumbersome and impedes their workflow.
Right.
Yeah.
And so basically, it's based management and the IT department, IT team, or IT provider not listening to the business need is really what it comes down to. Not understanding what the business need to deliver it. And
it's also sometimes just not listening to the boots on the ground. So these people, so I was gonna say, you can design the beautiful like perpendicular sidewalk, but people are gonna recognize that they can do it faster if they cut through. So that's a good metaphor for what actually happens. Is you can be like, hey, we've got this 5-step process for sharing files, and they're like, well, I could do it in 1 step if I use Dropbox. So you also have to think about, like, to you the 5-step makes sense, and it has security implications, and that's not necessarily what your workers are thinking. So.
I saw actually a really disturbing statistic that I think Matt's going to throw up here for us about percentages of people who of data of unsanctioned cloud services. 83%. That's bonkers if you really think about it. Because I think that kind of leads into our next segment of, so okay, let's assume that 83% of people are out there. What's the risk to the business? What's the risk to the firm? What's the risk to the organization?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of risks depending on what people are doing and what data is being done. The biggest one, I think, is that your risk for some type of data loss event where, and this could be from like a targeted cyber attack or a breach of a service or something. It's just that you've got data, you've got company data, company property essentially stored in a place that the company is not managing or not even aware of. So if I have data, let's say I have files from Valiant and I put it into my own personal Dropbox account, there's no way for the IT team to know that it's there, to protect it, to make sure anything is happening with it. And if my password for my Dropbox account becomes compromised, somebody can get access to those files and nobody would ever know that it's gone. I mean, let's say I have something important in there or it's just gone. There's in addition to that, there's if you have compliancy requirements, you can be in breach of that. And that can be a huge, huge deal. Because a lot of compliancy requirements, not only are you required to, let's say, keep data or destroy data, but notify people, notify your customers in the event of a data loss event. And if you don't know that it's happened because it's been put somewhere else, you have no way of notifying them. And when that if and when that comes out, the fact that it was stored in some unsanctioned place doesn't protect you from that. You're still liable for the breach on that. So, I mean, the big ones would be like for GDPR or Shield Act and things like that. If you've got data in a place that it's not supposed to be, it doesn't matter that it was in a place that it was supposed to be. You're responsible for that.
Yeah. And a lot of times that stuff, if it's stored someplace else, it might not be backed up, like you say, or so it could be something that's important that you lose because this person was just keeping it on their flash drive and no place else. Or it could be something that's you lose and you didn't realize you needed until there's a litigation and you need to go back on that information. And that works with chat too, because it's not necessarily like files. It could just be people talking back and forth, and there's an issue that you need to review that conversation, and it's not on a company platform, so you don't have access to like Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, and not even for liability, just straight workflow. There's a real life example of someone that we worked with where somebody was storing company documents in a personal account for stuff. Everybody had access to it. Nobody knew it was in a personal account. They just knew that this is the link we go to get this folder. When that employee was no longer employed by that company, he cut off access to his personal account because why wouldn't he? He doesn't work there anymore. And they lost access to all these files. And I mean, in the end, it worked out. But that even if it's that kind of situation is not uncommon. If you don't know where your stuff is, somebody can, very easily take the ball and go home.
Right. Exactly. And, and from just a company's liability perspective, you really touched on before, so much is ignorance of the law is no defense against it. Yeah. So you are responsible regardless. And if you are part of that, so it's really critical that we do know where everything lives, seriously.
And another common one is people downloading free software, which if it's something that you have to pay for, like if someone has a pirated copy of Adobe, first of all, downloading it can also download malware. So that's a huge risk factor. And then secondly, you would be in trouble if someone reports that you're using unlicensed Adobe. And big trouble, big fines. And like technically they can prevent your company from ever using that software again. Because that's part of their like user agreement. So that can be a huge thing too. And you need to know who's got unlicensed
that's another real world example that I've seen was a company that very nearly got that for Microsoft, where they came correct and fixed everything, but the threat that was on the table was you won't be allowed to buy Microsoft products any longer because you're pirating them. And you think about like, okay, what else we use? But it extended down to everything. They wouldn't have been allowed to buy anything.
Especially, and that's why we won't work on that stuff either as
Right.
principal, but we also we can discover that as well, which is something that's really important. We do that in our Valiant IT assessment process, and we can discover that sort of software auditing stuff.
Yeah,
There's a few different ways that we can do that. There's reporting that runs on the workstations and can tell you what's installed, and then you can say like, okay, why do these people have Dropbox installed? Looking at firewall logs, you can see like, okay, people are going to Dropbox. We're picking on Dropbox. That's a perfectly legitimate business. But people are
if you
going
have
to
it for sanctioned for your company.
So
Correct.
people keep going to Office 365, and we're a Google company. Why are people doing that? Or people keep going? Like, we can look at those patterns and say like, okay, what's being used here? Where are things happening here? And narrow that down.
And I have seen some of our newer clients, it'll be like, oh, people are using Google Drive and it's just their personal accounts because they're used to it. So you want to sort of fill that gap.
Yeah, and it's
and I do. Yeah.
Sorry, go,
I'll just say the another thing on my list is compatibility. Because if people are downloading their own different software, even if they're like upgrading their Mac OS, I know that we used to have problems where people would upgrade their operating system too soon, and then Keynote files weren't backwards compatible.
Right. Yeah.
But that can happen too. I actually just talked to Matt about. We put videos on our website. You can check it out at the Knowledge Base or on our YouTube page. But I record using Camtasia, and he and I are going to get together to move on to the same platform so that we can, actually edit each other's things. So you don't want someone to, like, luckily that is something that I use because it's sanctioned. But if it wasn't, it would be like, oh, I've got this file, but you can't edit it because I just use my own software. So
Right. And really, it's like you have to, as a provider or IT team, our job is to really understand what the people are using for real on the ground and communicate. It is like a tone deafness to what's going on. But so now we have the risk of. So what do you do about it? How do you just find this stuff out? How do we find out about this? What's our ways to kind of like combat it?
And the primary way to find this is running some kind of assessment or running through and looking at a combination of the workstations, what's installed, looking at network logs, looking at server logs, and figuring out where people are going, what programs people are using.
Right.
But more than that, I mean, that gives you the starting point. More than that, it's conversational. It's talking to departments and figuring out their workflows and saying like, okay, how do you guys work? What kinds of files are you working with? How do you transfer them? And people, people don't use Shadow IT maliciously. They're not going there because they want to break things. They're doing it because they're getting their job done, and people are inherently problem solvers and inherently want to find ways to do things. So generally find that when you talk to people, they will tell you like, oh yeah, I don't use that. I use this because this works better. And okay, great. That's not necessarily a bad thing as long as we bring it into management and into control.
Correct. Right.
Yeah. So it's a good idea to set like policies, and there are some that you can do that are actual like IT policies, like you can restrict local admin access. They can't download things on their computer, but then also have a policy and a procedure for them to request this stuff, to be like, hey, I have a need. Let me talk to my manager. Let me talk to the people who are in charge of purchasing about it and get that stuff.
Right.
So yeah, a couple of the policies you can put in place. I said you can do restrictions such as making it so that they can't download on their machines. You can make just like actual policies regarding file sharing, which is really important for things like confidentiality. And some of that you can use IT to enforce. I know we've done that for some people on Office 365. We're able to do that sort of thing. And then also mobile device management, because especially at a time like now, people are bringing in their own devices and they're using them for work. So is your data located on their local device, on their, iPad or their phone, or even are they using their own laptop because they're working from home now? So that's really important. You can retrieve the data, you can make sure that it has a password and stuff like that. So
and I think one of the things to take from this as well too is that discovering that their shadow IT, yes, is bad, but it's also an opportunity to enhance and streamline and
Yeah.
rebuild your IT practices. If you find that your employees have come up with a workaround for something, well, why not bring that workaround into your management and make
Right.
it the way that you do things? If everybody is like, yeah, we love Dropbox, we use Dropbox all the time. Okay, let's get Dropbox for Business, bring that data in and apply our policies to it and our control
Yeah.
over it and back it up. And now it's a safe and secure tool to use, as opposed to just people cutting the corners on the path.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's what that picture was. It's Cornell's art quad, I believe, and they just paved over the desire paths that people wanted. So that's why it's not just a square, but it's actually, convenient and safe for people now. They aren't trampling through the grass. They aren't, it's a little bit safer of a walk. It's a bit more direct. So it's pretty cool what happens when you listen to the actual users.
Yeah.
Right. No, yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I think it's great. I mean, it's interesting, and I think that the company, just doing IT work for a long time, there's a definitely a no aspect for most IT professionals that happens all the time,
mhm.
where people are like, it becomes a part of almost like the only thing people say is no, but it didn't come, or wasn't invented here in the IT department, so there's no way it could possibly be something that anyone uses. So I think
Yeah.
I think you have to strike the balance between
Yeah.
the no's
Yeah.
and the do whatever you like. So and that's that's the main goal.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
For me, the balance in the middle is, well, here's what we would have to do to make that work. And there's always a way. It's just you
Yeah.
have to figure out how to make that work.
Make it
And in
secure, make it,
Yeah. And in some cases,
backed up.
like I said, it's a balance. In some cases, the work savings of changing something and putting another system in place outweighs the cost of doing that. And other times it's, no, everybody, we know that this is an inconvenience. This is why we have to do it this way. And it's
Mhm.
cheaper to have everybody spend an extra few minutes on this task than it is
right.
to fix it so that you don't have to. And
Yeah.
that's a business
Which is
decision. Is
and sorry, I was say we mentioned before that training is so important because of
Mhm.
that. I mean,
Right.
part of it is letting them know what the business decision is, but also people won't use something if they don't know how. I've seen that a lot where people have like Office 365 and that you can do file sharing on there, but people are like, well, I know how to use Google Drive
Mhm.
because that's what I use in my personal life, and they don't.
Right.
So they need to know how to use the tools that you have, the reasons
Mhm.
behind it. And that's why training is really important. And I know I'm the training manager, so of course training is important. But
I
it
100%.
is.
Yeah,
There's
but
a
it's
reason why
another
I have
one.
this title.
Yeah, we run into that all the time.
Yep.
Both Office 365 and G Suite, if you include with them file sharing tools and cloud tools and
Mhm.
all the stuff that's in them. They're bundles
Not
of
just
tools,
email.
right?
Right. Not just email. Correct.
And we find all the time companies that are, not only are they paying for one of those, but paying for another product that does the same thing because they didn't know how to use
Right.
the other tool. So
Yeah.
in that case, it's a strategy. They're doing the right thing. They're paying for, and I'm going to pick on Dropbox again because there's another, but they're paying for a business Dropbox account, but they have the same tools in the system they already have. They just didn't know how to use it. And same thing. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh, the people who are doing the work are, I know how to use Dropbox. I need to spend $100 to get my job done. And most people are going
Mhm.
to look at that and say, $100 so that you can do your job. Yeah, sure, no problem. But
Right.
that also could just be, oh, we have something for that. Let me sit and show you for 20 minutes how to do this thing. And now we've saved that money and you're using the tool that you have already.
That's
Yeah.
right. And
And
it. Oh, sorry, Mary. Go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was just going to say, and a lot of people will know, like, oh, yeah, this can do this, but I like this because it has this feature. And maybe it does have that feature, but you just didn't know. Or maybe, no one had that discussion between the users and IT, and they
Right.
didn't know that they can enable it because,
Mhm.
that's there's a lot of features.
Yeah.
Feature. Yeah, I think actually there's almost too many features at times.
Mhm.
People don't know how to use these tools, and even myself, I'm always like, I didn't know it did that at all. You
Yeah.
kind of you find yourself getting confused by it at times.
Well, if anyone's watching and wants to know if there's features available, just message us, ask us a question,
Yep.
and I am glad to either make a KB or we can have a little live stream just like this. But yeah, send us a question. Let us know what you're
Mhm.
confused about.
Right.
It'd be great. We're glad to help.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's funny. We are never it never ceases to amaze me how the use case of people, how they use tools in ways that are like, I wouldn't have thought to use it that way, but that's really smart. People find ingenious ways to use things in totally variety of manner. And our goal, I guess, is to provide them a platform to do it safely that we can understand and protect both the personal and the business as well. So
Yeah.
very cool. Guys, anything else we need? We have a comment
there's
here.
a comment coming in.
Yeah. Oh, this is actually this is from Mr. Matt Fox here. Who deserves it? Have you ever had a situation where shadow IT and sanctioned IT run in parallel? I'm going to say that's the situation. I think that happens all the time. I think it's a persistent. It's almost a persistent threat. Is that you're going to have these parallel where the company and their technology department is deploying a solution, and people are finding every methodology around not doing it that way. So
I think Matt, can you pull up that the CIA Triad real quick? That slide that you had. So we're looking at it, and we're going to get it more into this. I think tomorrow on the webinar. But that bottom one, availability. I don't want to dive too deep into it. But availability is essentially saying that something that you have already that you've put in place is easy to use, that people can get to it, that people can use it. And when that doesn't meet people's criteria, they're going to find something else. So you can have two systems that are completely running at the same time. You have OneDrive and Dropbox doing the same thing, but people found OneDrive difficult to get to and difficult to use, so they do their own.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen places where they don't have a centralized system. So some people are doing shadow IT with Dropbox. Some people are doing shadow, are using Google Drive. And then other people are using a separate Google, even if they might have a company Google Drive, and then people are using their personal Google Drive because that's how it was set up the whole time. And they don't know that they can use their company one, or they have things like that. So
right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll see, and it's actually pretty interesting when you start talking to people about in billing, and you start saying well, did you look at people's credit card bills and see what they're using, and you'll see bills for the classic example is all these Amazon bills and Google and all these other things, and you're like, well, what do you think those are for? Yeah, you kind of want to ask the question to people. So as part of when we do our assessments, we kind of see this it's pretty persistent. We see it over and over again, unfortunately.
Yeah, redundant things. Yeah.
Redundant things. And this is cost and, the risk, that sort of thing. So, all right, guys. Do you guys have anything else that are important for the shadow IT thing? I think we got a pretty good coverage of this one.
Yeah, I mean, just, it's good to talk to your staff, get an assessment, do training. And that's a great way those are great ways to prevent people from going out on their own. And
I think one of the things that your IT provider or department should be doing as well is checking in with not just assuming everything is okay because people aren't submitting tickets that things are broken. I know one of the things that we do is our account managers, our VCIOs, meet with clients at least once a quarter to go over how things are working, and that's at a bare minimum. I mean, you really should be able to use the opportunities to talk to the people you're supporting and figure out what they're doing, if there's a way that you can make things work better for them. And that's the whole idea, is to help people work more effectively, more efficiently.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of wasting time on things like excessive logins and all the other things that cause people to have stress, to find every method to go around the process.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
And we mentioned at the beginning, you can put in the policies, you can put in the structure that you want to happen, and if people aren't doing it, then there goes your plans.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that we're going to talk about that, not so much shadow IT, but we're going to talk about security best practices in the webinar tomorrow. But again, you have to make sure that if you want people to follow it, make sure that their needs are being met. So don't let them circumvent your best practices, your policies, everything like that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Marianne, Justin. This is great.
Thank you.
Always a fun time doing these and putting these together. I hope that people are getting some use out of them. Please like and subscribe them. And once again, please join us tomorrow for a webinar. I think it's going to have a lot of great information that's super useful for day-to-day business operations, and having just the things that we can do to secure each business and make it just that much safer against these advanced threats that are coming at us at all sides. And we'll talk about it tomorrow. And the numbers are staggering, and it's sobering, but we can definitely have things that are going to protect businesses and have a way to give some reassurance to folks. So join in tomorrow. And before I leave, our last thing, we're gonna have our next session next week on Wednesday is a really good one. An overlooked piece of the Microsoft Office Microsoft 365 stack, OneDrive, which has gone through multiple iterations and it's finally, I think, matured to the level that it can really meet the needs of most organizations. So with that, see you guys tomorrow at the webinar. I'd love to see you then, and have a good week. See you tomorrow. Bye now.
Bye. Thank you.